All right, on today's episode of Disruptors, I'm here with the one and only Coach Scott Drew from Baylor University. It's always a pleasure to be with you, man.
Always a pleasure to be with you. When you and I first met, I had a lot more hair. You didn't have gray. I mean.
And in between, you became a champ, so now I'm calling you champ, my man.
Well, I can tell you one thing. Both of us have been blessed to be around a lot of good people, a lot of good players, and both of them have had a great impact on our families. So both of us are blessed.
That's right. You ready to talk disruption?
Let's go.
All right.
We have the resources. We have the people. We have the leadership.
God has blessed us with unbelievable players, the people that have come for 18 years.
Let's get to it right away. Baylor basketball draft history between 1906 and 2003. We talk about 98 season, 13 draft picks, only 3 first-round picks, and 1 lottery pick. Now, NBA draft history after you took over the program in 2003, we're going to talk about 20 season, 13 draft picks, 6 first-round picks, and 4 lottery picks. Man, this is culture changer. Culture changer.
Well, as you know, it all starts with players. And if you have good players, you put them in positions to be successful. Good things happen. And then one thing about society, once you see someone be successful, younger players can see themselves going to the same place, doing the same thing. Right. And that's what you love is when you have a good role model, someone that works really hard and is able to achieve their goals and dreams, and then that inspires others to want to do the same, hopefully at Baylor University.
So the rebuild of the program is regarded by many as, you know, one of the most, the best turnaround in college sport history. You know, tell us about that.
Well, I think first and foremost, Baylor University's always been an outstanding academic school, and being the largest Baptist school in the nation definitely has a great niche, and the family environment is something that's different and special. It's a smaller university compared to most Power Fives. But athletically, we had success, but not really continued or elevated success like we've had recently. And you look at it since 2011, most people say football, men's basketball, women's basketball are your 3 main sports. Mm-hmm. And we're the winningest Power 5 program in the country since 2011, 58 more wins than the second place team, Notre Dame, during that time. So if you think about it, it's like saying who's the winningest NBA franchise in the last 11 years and naming one that hasn't had a lot of tradition or history and of winning a ton of championships. Baylor sporadically was pretty good, but not continually. So the fact that since 2011, the winningest place, and then basketball itself, we're the winningest Power 5 program in the last 4 years. We've been here since 2003, but really the year we went to the NCAA tournament for the first time was 2008. We'd only gone one other time previous of that since 58, 57. Right. So, and then continuing from there, going to the NCAA tournament, winning games, being successful. We've won 2 championships, an NIT championship and an NCAA championship. Very few schools have ever done both of those things.
That's crazy how you rebuilt that program. You came in 2003 when pretty much nobody wanted that job. I guess it was the worst job in America. And you know, slowly you brought in that culture, you developed that legacy, and you know, I think it only took about 4 years for you to have a 20+ win season, if I'm correct. How do you manage to do that at a young age?
Yeah,
he was a young coach.
He had a lot more energy back then. Now I got to drink a lot more coffee. But I had the blueprint coming from my dad's program, Valparaiso University, largest Lutheran school in the nation, but not a lot of athletic success. Never had a winning record, Division I. And basically what we did there I remember when he took the job at that time, the Notre Dame head coach, a legendary coach, Digger Phelps, told my dad, don't take that job. You can't win there. No one's ever won there. And we go there, and basically we were the first mid-major, went to the Sweet 16 in 1998, and Gonzaga kind of followed and had tremendous success and runs after that, but we were one of the first mid-majors ever to do that. And UMass with Calipari at the time was a similar school, winning conference championships year after year and being really successful. So what we did there, we implemented here. Why we were able to be successful here, again, Baylor has a great foundation, great people, great academic, spiritual institution. And when you have good people and a good foundation, it's just about us doing our job, bringing in players that fit our culture and can be successful.
But that's not an easy job to do. Obviously, you know, you said that bringing in players that fit your culture. I know one thing that you guys have done, and that's been really, I guess, good for you guys is go, one, the international route. Yeah. And two, develop guys, because you weren't the type of program at first to recruit all those 5-star kids, and you know, you got a lot of unknown / unranked kids that you developed going through the red shirt route and making them pros. So that has been a big part of Baylor rebuild.
Yeah, 100%. And if you want to start with the international part, Baylor is such a great school for international students because. For instance, in our last class, we had 51,000 apply. We took about 3,300. And from that, all 50 states are represented, and a huge number of international countries, like 39 foreign countries or more, Baylor students. So a smaller family environment, it's easier for teachers to give individual attention, for international students to be successful in the classroom, and then as they go throughout campus, everybody knows them, loves them, so it's easier to feel appreciated and want to get better in your sport and give everything you have to the school. So that was a good fit for us, and we've chosen the right international players for the most part because we get good information on what their backgrounds are like. And then everybody, beauty's always in the eye of the beholder. You look at the stock market, some people like this company, some like that company. With us, we really dig into trust in the people we know internationally. You're one of them, but people that really value the character and the makeup. And the reason is some people go to work and it's 9 to 5 and they're out. Some people go to work and they'll work 24/7 to be successful. And the players that will put in the work get better. And so when you have a culture of players all working hard, now if I work 8 hours a day and I'm around you and you work 11, well now I'm working 11, so it makes both of us better. You might go to 12 to keep ahead of me, and it's just iron sharpens iron. I think our biggest international success is Freddie, or biggest international success might have been Jonathan Chamwachachua coming from Vegas, where he averaged, 3-2 or something, and came and just, he learned from Freddie Gillespie. I don't know if there's a bigger success story in college basketball. He was at Carleton College, a Division III school, and he scored a total of 4 points all year.
Wow.
So
all year.
All year. So in Division III, he scores 4 points. So you're not even doing anything in Division III. Yeah. He walks on at Baylor, and then just lives in the gym, becomes a much better player, and ends up averaging 10 and 9 all conference. And then the next year's playing in the NBA with the Toronto Raptors, plays 20 minutes a game and like over 20 games for the Raptors. And he averaged he had a total of 4 points all year in Division III.
This is crazy. But how do you get this kid? You say he walks on to Baylor. Is he his decision to come into Baylor as a walk-on, or did you guys see something in him? Yeah. And offer him to come as a walk-on. Yeah.
So great question. Like it's always who you know and what they know. Right, and so Coach Nunes knew Freddie and his family. His parents were good friends with him, and said, "This kid's got a love for basketball. Right. He's got potential, and I think he'll achieve it." So, I mean, it's a Division III school, so he didn't have a scholarship. So he's walking. He didn't have one there. He walks on here, and from the intel, it was 100% accurate. So then what happens? He's in the gym all the time. Jonathan Chamwachachua comes in. Freddie kind of takes him under his wing. And what is Jonathan already was a gym rat. Now he's even a bigger gym rat, keeping up with Freddie. So that's just kind of how that culture works. I mean, by 6 or 7 in the morning, Jonathan's on workout 1 or 2. So he always has a workout. Then before practice, and then after practice at night, and everybody knows that. So like that, we try to have that culture.
Right. So talking about culture, I know something is really big here at Baylor is that culture of joy. Tell me about it.
So
what does that mean?
A culture of joy is like you got a great smile. That's why you're like a GQ model, all right?
Oh, come on,
so
man.
some of us that aren't as good looking like me, like joy. Actually, we got this from Dabo Sweeney, whose Clemson football team won a championship, talked about their culture of joy. He got it from Tony Dungy. So any good coaching idea has been around the block.
Right.
But joy, basically, it's playing for Jesus, others, yourself. And if you're on a team, and your team cares more about you than they care about themselves, you're going to love that team. And so now on the court, I'm open, but you know what? I'm playing for others and myself last.
Right.
And Baylor being a Christian school, obviously at the end of the day, you can have $1 billion, you can win as many championships as you want, but we're on this earth for 75, 80 years if we're lucky. Getting to heaven and eternity, that's all that matters. So keeping the priority, and that's Jesus. Second thing is others. You live, I love in the Bible, it says, teacher, what's the greatest commandment of the law? Love your God with all your heart, soul, and mind. Love your neighbor as yourself. Who doesn't want to be around people that love others more than they love themselves? So you have a team like that. Everybody's happy. Everyone wants to sacrifice for each other. And it's fun being on a team like that. It's when you're on teams where you know your teammate, you're open and they're not throwing it to you and they don't care about you. Then all of a sudden,
happens
wait, I thought it's a team. We're not here,
Yeah. No, that's right. Well, that's a great recipe for winning, I guess.
Yeah.
What was your lowest point, if there was any?
Well, there's always low points. So
at
there's
Baylor
always
or in your career.
Yeah. Well, I think definitely. My dad, the first couple of years at Baylor, said we're going to read the Book of Job, and anyone that's read the Book of Job in the Bible knows that he had a lot, and then he had nothing. And at Valpo, we had won championship after championship. You come to Baylor, and you're trying as hard as you can, but usually you go into games, and if Las Vegas, says you're going to lose by 35, you're not going to pull a lot of wins out, So we competed. We played as hard as we could, and we won 3 conference games, which was more than we were supposed to win, and we didn't finish in last place. The next year, we only won 1 conference game.
That was the first
season. So we had anywhere between 5 and 7 scholarship players that year. So it was a walk-on dream because I came in August, and it was too late to recruit anybody. And then we had 5 to 7 because we had a couple academic issues. So they were on the team, off the team. We had 1 player leave the team. So most of the year, you're 5 to 7, and that means over half your team are walk-ons. So you're going in the student body, and not only are they walk-ons, usually you have 13 scholarships, and walk-ons are 14, 15, 16, and they're just practice players when you need. But ours were actually playing in the game. Some were starting. So when you're playing against 5-star McDonald's All-Americans, it's very similar to saying you got an NBA team and we're going to throw in a high school team. And you compete, and usually the NBA players beat the high school team, right? So
not usually. I guess all the time.
So first, we couldn't be more proud of the foundation those guys laid by staying, competing, the scholarship players, and then the walk-ons for how hard they sacrificed and prepared. But really, you look at it, those first 3 years, we didn't. First year, 3 conference wins. Second year, 1 conference win. The next year, probably the low point, the NCAA final sanctions came in, and we only got half a season. So we had a really good recruiting class. We had to tell them, the NCAA just said we're going to be the only team in school's history to ever get a half season. So you're why a half season? So no one's had it, but here's what it's like. you're practicing for months and months and months. Everybody else is playing.
Right.
So you're in Texas, you know the speed limit's 75. So you're going down the highway 75. Well, you play that non-conference like the ramp and everyone's going 75.
Right.
Without a non-conference, everyone's going 75. January, we play our first game. You're getting on the highway. You're going 40. You're going 50. You're going 60. So you wait all this time to play, and then you go out and play, and you're terrible.
Yeah, terrible. Yeah.
Yeah, because you haven't. It's like any EuroLeague team without any friendly games or without any league games, and just playing Euro Cup.
Yeah,
Like you got to play games before you play Euro
You
Cup.
gotta have reps. Yeah.
Yeah, you can't just show up for the NBA playoffs. You got to have the regular season to get good. You know, so probably that of telling them we're only going to get a half conference season, that was hard. But then after you spend all that time practicing, you're the only one that's ever gone through this. So you assume when you start playing, it's all going to be good.
Right.
Well, then you go out and you're not
get
very
smashed.
good. Oh, so now the bright side at the very end of that year, we were fresh and everyone else was tired.
Right.
We were going 75, so we ended the season on some wins, and that was great. But that's 3 years in the desert, meaning you're getting better, but you're not seeing the fruits of your labor, because at the end of the day, you want to win.
Right.
And if you don't win, it's not as fun, right?
I agree.
Yeah.
I
So
agree.
those 3 years were probably the lowest point. The first highest point was the next year, NCAA tournament. Bracketology's got us in the tournament. Joey Brackets says we're going to be in the tournament, but we go the whole TV show putting up the teams, and we're down to the last team.
Wow.
And we have the arena packed because it's the first time going
Was
to
it
the tournament.
2008?
Yeah, so 2008, and then the last time Baylor had gone to the tournament, I believe, was 88. And then the last time we'd gone before that was like 1958. Yeah. So one time in like
Every
60,
30
70 years. So everybody's packed in the Farrell Center. You're waiting. You're seeing, where's your name? Where's your name? And they're not calling our name. We get to the last name. They call our name. Place goes nuts.
Crazy.
And yeah, and that was probably as exciting as moment, because for 3 years you work for that.
And then, if I can flip it on the other side, what was the highest point, as far as not the highest point, but what was the toughest, if there's any, toughest game, or biggest rivalry, should I say? Because obviously the Big 12 is, if not one of them, the most, the best conference in the United States. Yeah. I mean, it's regarded as that. So what was the best rivalry or toughest game in that?
So A&M and Texas are the two that probably would come to mind because of their proximity and the great tradition competing against them. And there was one game we played at College Station, and it ended up being a 5 overtime game.
5 overtime?
5 overtime. So it was the longest game in Big 12 history up to that point. Unfortunately, back in that time, not every game was televised.
Right.
If that game was televised, ratings would have been through the roof because it was an amazing game. But here's what
Did you win it?
Here's what made it even crazier. At the end of the game, 5th overtime, we have everybody foul out except for our last player's a walk-on, and he comes in the game. And I think we gave him a scholarship later in the year, but we had nobody so we had 5 on the court and nobody else who could play. So if one of them fouled out, it was going to be 5 on 4.
Right.
And as a coach, you're always like, you got to be ready. You're going to be called upon. You don't know when your time is. It was his time. He made a couple key plays. Richard Hurd helped us win that game.
So you won it.
We win the game in 5 overtimes.
This is crazy.
So the players loved it because everything is close. So instead of getting a healthy meal on the way home, which is only an hour and 15, hour and a half drive, the only place open is Whataburger. So the players had a great Whataburgers and shakes. They love that post game.
Wow.
We get back to campus, and I don't know if it's 2:30. It's raining in the parking lot, and by the tunnel area's packed with students. They were waiting to greet the guys, and it was amazing. Now the only downside is the next time we played A&M, as a coach, you watch the last game, to prepare. And it took forever to watch that game because 5 overtime
is long. It's long.
But they, since that time, did a replay on ESPN and have that game. But that was a 5 overtime game was crazy. The first time we beat Texas at Texas was was amazing too, because we had some close games and they had beaten us like 21 or 22 straight times in a row, and we ended up winning at their place, and then everything kind of changed, and now we've been really successful in that series recently. But that's a great program. A&M's a great program. Great rivalry. Fans really get excited for those games. So, and a lot of great players have played in those games.
I don't know if you have Italian background, but you
I do.
You speak a lot with your hands.
Yeah.
And your hands right now are shining a little too much. Tell me about that. Tell me about that shiny hand.
My grandpa's from Reggio Calabria, and that's that Italian background. So anyway, my brother-in-law and brother actually have their Italian dual citizen passports too.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, because you be moving that hand a little too much. I see it's shiny.
I thought it's just the Italian food I like.
I mean, the Italian food, the culture, the ring. Tell me about that ring you got, man. That rebuilding led you from 2003 to, I want to say 2020. That pandemic kind of cut the season short, halfway through, but you was having a great season. And then you came back in 21 to, get this done.
So we believe in first, because you look at it, we were the only team to ever play half a season. We're also the only team to win a national championship during a pandemic. But the year before,
this is disruptive.
Yeah, that's it. The year before that is really where we were on pace, the first time in school's history, to get a #1 seed in the NCAA tournament.
Right.
And boom, COVID, season canceled. But we had won 23 games in a row. That's the longest Big 12 streak currently in Big 12 history. And 23 games in a row is amazing.
That's a lot of games.
Great feat.
Yeah.
And that team would have been a #1 seed and had a chance to win a national championship. The team the next year won 20 in a row, 21 in a row. We have 3 of the 5 longest Big 12 win streaks. And that team, we actually hadn't lost a game, and then we got COVID. And coming back from COVID, we dropped 2 games, but that probably helped us get ready for the Big 12 tournament. And then we went on that run in the bubble. So we're the only team to ever win an NCAA championship in a bubble. So the ring, the Toronto Raptors had won the ring the previous year, and the company that made it made theirs the biggest ring. So we had the same company do it. We said, well, wait, we got to be bigger than, because everything's bigger in Texas, bigger than the Raptors ring.
Right.
So this is the largest ring. Now the Raptors diamonds are a little more expensive than college diamonds, but this is a big ring. That's a weight right there.
Wow.
So,
ladies and gentlemen, you see here it first, live and direct. On my finger. I call myself a national champ.
Yeah, definitely a national champ.
The champ of disruption. Here you go, champ. This is big, man. Congratulations for that.
I love that. So then we win that national championship, and I can tell you, we talked about culture. If you're 4 weeks in a bubble, because we were in the Big 12 tournament to the NCAA tournament, if you don't like who you're with, like we actually as coaches could tell when teams were about to lose, because you could tell that players were, because you're always around, players, you could overhear, man, we're just ready to get out of this bubble, we're ready to get home. You're like, they're going to lose.
Right.
And then we'd win a game, and our players would be like, yes, we get to stay in the bubble. So
they were excited to be here.
They had a great time together and wanted to accomplish something. The first national championship in Baylor's history. We've been to the Final Four in the 50s twice, but it's the first national championship. So couldn't be more pleased and happy for that group. The next year we had another real long win streak, and then we had a couple season-ending injuries. Langston Love went out at the beginning of the year, L.J. Cryer in the mid-year, and Jonathan Chama-Chachua in the mid-year. But
that was a tough year.
We were actually undefeated up to that point, ranked #1. So that was like 3 straight years. At one point, you could have won a championship.
But the crazy thing is, at that time, you just said it, 3 straight years where you were pretty much on top, and those media and everybody was still having you as an underdog. I remember going into the Final Four, Gonzaga was still, viewed as the top team that, can nobody beat Gonzaga. And I remember watching that game after 10 minutes in the first half, you were up 19. walk me through that championship game.
Yeah.
What was that mentality?
Well, it was amazing how God works, because in December, I think it was December 5th or December 2nd, we were supposed to play Gonzaga in Indianapolis. So both of us are there. They had just come from a tournament in Florida or something. So we're both in the hotel. They're on one floor, we're on another floor. And at the time, they're number 1 and we're number 2. So 1 and 2, CBS, like that doesn't happen often.
Big game, yeah.
So huge game.
Huge game.
And that morning, we find out before we're to go over to the game, game's off because there was a couple players that tested positive for COVID. And so 1 versus 2, we're all bummed out. We were joking because Coach Few is a good friend of mine, and actually when we were in the bubble later that year, he's a big pickleball player. Like, he's tremendous. So I'm a really good recruiter. So if I'm gonna play it and I'm gonna take a partner, I'm gonna be with a good one, right? So me and him were undefeated in the bubble playing pickleball together. But so, like, we joked, we could have had the Nerf hoops and we could have played on the 5th floor and played the game right there, with the healthy guys.
Right.
But anyway, why it was so amazing is we're in Indianapolis, the place of the national championship game, and it's 1 versus 2. And fast forward, the game's not played, and now we play Gonzaga in the championship.
In Indianapolis.
And they're still undefeated. Now, we had lost 2 games because we had just come off of COVID, weren't playing great, and got back into the rhythm. And so now in the NCAA tournament, we're playing well, and now that game's played. National audience. So just an amazing way how that all worked. And again, if anyone needs to know how to be successful in the bubble, we're the only ones that have won a championship, so we got the answers. But it starts with having great players that love one another.
Yeah, I'm sure. But see, most coaches, from my experience, coaches or team, when that's the first time they go to a national title game, it's not easy to win. You don't have that experience. I don't care how much win you had in the season. That title game is special. Again, what's the mentality when you get into that game?
Yeah, normally they say you got to knock before you enter. So you get there, you lose, but you gain the experience. Now it's about getting back and winning.
Right.
But again, God had a different plan for us, and you could have said maybe it was to win 3 in a row, but like, it takes time for people to really believe. And what I mean by that is, like, remember when Golden State won their first championship? Everybody's used to, no, it's got to be the Lakers, or it's got to be the Celtics, or it's got to be. But you win enough, and now all of a sudden, they're one of the best franchises. Same thing with Baylor. Like, if you look at it, winning his Power 5 program the last 4 years, we've had a top 3 NCAA seed in the last 4 years. One of 4 programs to be ranked number 1 4 times since 2017. So, I mean, we've been consistently pretty good from 2017 on, 2018 on. So the question now is, like, some people say, are you a blue blood? No, we're a green blood. Baylor's green. Yeah. So, but now when we win, it's not as surprising, and very similar to schools like Villanova, Gonzaga, a lot of teams that have had great success because of great programs led by great coaches. Jay Wright did a phenomenal job, a good friend. Coach Few, good friend. So anyway, but it all starts with players. Coaches never win anything without players. I learned that real quick when Phil Jackson was winning championships with the Bulls, and then Michael went to baseball. They didn't win a championship the next year. And trust me, Phil didn't forget anything, like he's still a good coach.
He was missing a great piece.
So at the end of the day, players are the ones that deserve all the credit.
Got it. Just like agents. Sometimes brag about how good they are, but they're nothing without the players.
Yeah, 100%.
We talked about, obviously, the culture that you brought in with, bringing in international kids, developing guys, redshirting some of the guys for a year to get them ready for the following year. You also became a trademark school for great shooters. Tell me about your coaching philosophy with great shooters.
At the end of the day, I've heard this once. Here's a basket. Good coach, bad coach. Good coach, bad coach. Good coach, bad coach. It goes in, it's a good coach. Goes out, bad coach. So you need them shooters, right? So at the end of the day, especially you look at professional sports, take Europe, take the NBA, You got to have people stretch the floor. People can make shots. And the more people you have like that, the more lanes and open everything is. And analytically, offensively, in the last 12 years, us and Duke have had the best offenses in the country. A big part of that is having players who can space the floor.
Right. So do you, are you big on analytics? Because today, like in the modern, basketball era, it's sports in general. Okay? In soccer, it's like that. I don't know about football. I'm pretty sure it's the same. Everybody's talking, analytics. There's not much left, much room left for, just. I want to say talent. Maybe it's a language barrier, but just the natural talent, the eye test. It's all about analytics per minute, this and that. What's your take on that?
Well, I think first we've been one of the first schools to jump into it, and a lot of times we call it facts over feelings, because you might love somebody, like you love him as a player, but the facts are when he's on the court you don't win, and when he's off the court you do. So you gotta go by the facts.
Right.
At the same time, just what you said is really critical though, and that is it's not all just analytics, because sometimes a player might be a great player, but his teammates they're not better when he's on the court, meaning like he doesn't bring out the best in them. And some things, you can take the Tom Brady's, the Drew Breeses, and just using football quarterbacks, like they don't have the quickest 40 time, they're not the tallest, but they have the intangibles that win. And it's very similar. You look at basketball players, there's a lot of talented athletic players, but what made Kobe special was his work ethic and his killer attitude. And like, there's no analytic for that. No. So there's certain things that you I think as a coach you want to take everything in and make a decision. But analytics is definitely a good tool for people that have a toolbox. You want that tool in there to look at and utilize, but at the same time, it's not the only tool in the tool.
Let's talk about the coaching tree now. You've obviously always surrounded yourself with, pretty amazing people, great staff, and you've built that coaching tree. I'm thinking about, recently Coach Tang winning the national head coach of the year, Paul Mills, Oral Roberts, McCaslin, Driscoll. Like you've had a lot of coaches under you, went on to become, successful head coaches. How does that make you feel?
Well, first, it wasn't what I did, it's what we did. And the second thing is...
Teamwork.
Yep, and the second thing is, every great point guard wants to have great players around him. Every quarterback wants to have great players around him. Every goalie wants to make sure he's got good players around him.
Right.
And as a coach, a head coach is only as good as his staff. You got to be around people that make you better. And to me, it's a blessing because pro sports are business, college sports are business, but it's also personal. And what I mean by that is, like at Baylor, we call it preparing champions for life. It's spiritual, it's academic, it's character formation, and athletic. So we're taking 18-year-olds and we're preparing them for not just basketball, but we're preparing them to be successful husbands, successful fathers, successful in everything they do, hopefully for the next 60 years of their life. And it's not just, we'll see you at shoot around, we'll see you at the game, and it's in strictly transactional. So with that, I want to have coaches that make me a better husband, a better father, a better coach. I want to learn from them as much as they learn from me. And I want them to work as hard as I work. And I never want, Jesus came to serve, not be served. So I'm not going to want our staff to do things I wouldn't do. But at the same time, I can't be the only one doing it. And I remember Coach K, when he went out the one year with his back, he had back surgery. And he said when he came back, he realized, and he got much better at delegating. And he couldn't have done what he did without that.
Right.
And with us, when I first got into coaching, a lot of times you had 2 full-time assistants and 1 head coach. And then now coaching staffs are 7, 8, 9 people. Yeah. And then you have strength coaches, you have nutritionists, you have trainers,
really
you have
deep,
GAs. So you're really more of a corporation, and every leader knows that he's only as good as the people around him. So I say all that. I learned as much from our coaches as they hopefully learned from me.
It's a mutual relationship.
Mutual. And my dad, the way he ran his program is how I have run our program, and I think it does help with preparing head coaches from a standpoint. There's a lot of delegation, and you're not just pigeonholed into you're doing just defense or you're doing just rebounding. You're working with the bigs, you're working with the guards, you're working with the wings, you're working with the offense, you're working with the defense, but you have responsibility to where you've done everything. So when you're a head coach, you're not an expert maybe in every field, but you're competent in every field.
Right.
And it's not during practice where my voice is the only voice. It's everyone has a voice. So many hands make light work, and that's how we run our program. So with that, Coach Driscoll gets to North Florida, leads them to their first NCAA tournament in school's history. You get Coach Mills goes to Oral Roberts, the first time they ever go to the Sweet 16. Now he's at Wichita State. Coach McCaslin, he took Arkansas State and North Texas to unprecedented heights. North Texas wins their first NIT championship every year. And Coach Tang, he wins National Coach of the Year in his first year. So I don't know how you go up from that. But,
I know, right?
But it just shows you that all of them really helped create and develop Baylor basketball. But from that standpoint, the model we use here works.
But that's beautiful because obviously I've been around sports for so long that I've known different type of personalities and character. Some guys are all about themselves. And obviously that basketball family that you come from, helped you bring that legacy about, like you said, sharing, winning all together, growing all together. And that has to be a special feeling.
And hopefully that never changes because at the end of the day, it's a team game. We all win, we all lose. And so we're all responsible for it. And I've just been blessed to be a better coach, father, husband because of the men that God's put in our program, and hopefully that continues.
That's real. That's real. Especially today, the business model changed with the new landscape and the transfer portal and all kind of, I want to say, high expectations from programs, and everybody's trying to win to save their job or to whatever. And you still, have that mentality of trying to all win, not just you. And I respect you for that.
I appreciate you, sir.
What was young Scott like? Is it? Were you born a disruptor, or is it some mentality that you grow over the years?
Yeah, I always share this that I think one of the best compliments you can ever give your dad is you follow in his footsteps professionally, because that means he must have done something right that you want to be like him. And to me, the fact that he always incorporated us, let us come when the team traveled to games, let us be around practice, let us just have a part in it. I think really God gave me a desire to form teams, bring out the best in people. We call it good business. Both parties benefit. And just seeing people reach their goals and dreams, that's my dream. Like some people, their dream is to be the star football player, basketball player, soccer player. Others, I want to be. My goal is to help people reach their goals and dreams. And that God just gave me that desire. And like when I can play a small part in that, that's when I feel most rewarded. And blessed that my dad gave me an opportunity to learn from him and get me into this profession. And God has obviously blessed us with great players and staff that could excel in it. And again, I go back and my dad deserves a lot of the credit.
Shout out to Dad, the great Homer Drew. If you had two mind-blowing stories that have never been told that you'd like to share with me.
I don't know about mind-blowing stories, but I could take it in this. I've had two moments in basketball that are exceptional, and we always talk about an and one, so I'll throw that in. The first one was 1998 when my brother hits the shot. We beat Ole Miss, and then we go to the Sweet 16. It's really like the first mid-major to advance like that. And they didn't have cell phones back then, so you'd go to the hotel, and we had to unplug all the phones because all the media were calling our players, trying to get, and back in the day, like I remember SID would give us these little pink cards, and it literally was like 50 or 100 of them, like, can you do this radio interview show, this radio interview show, and like it's just Chicago, LA, New York. I mean, like
Out of control.
out of control. And I remember like one of our coaches like, oh, Jim Rome, I'll do that one. You know, like, but it was like the who's who. It was
Right.
all in the beginning stages of all these people's career. And it just when my brother hit that shot, everybody dove on top of him. Like that moment to be able to share it with my dad and brother was just amazing. The next one obviously is winning a national championship. Very few people get to experience that, and for us to be able to be the first to win Baylor national championship in the bubble, again, what brings me great joy is seeing other people excited and
Right.
to see all the Baylor fans and family, administration, alumni, all the former players, the current players, everybody that poured into that, to be able to see them. And you come back, you have the parade, and the parade was coming out of COVID. People weren't around each other, and then all of a sudden we have a parade. It seemed everybody in Texas was there, and blocks on blocks, and you couldn't imagine anything that great. And the bonus one would be the NIT championship, because you cut down nets in Madison Square Garden, and how many people ever get to cut down a net in Madison Square Garden? And those are three.
That symbol is deep. Yeah.
That's three experiences that one with your brother, with your dad, two championships. God's really blessed us and rewarded us, and all I can say is hopefully we got a lot more of those to come.
My man, I appreciate you for sharing your knowledge with me. It's very valuable. I hope we're going to be able to do it again. But for now, the show is over. Disruptors, stay tuned.
We have the resources. We have the people. We have the leadership.
God has blessed us with unbelievable players, the people that have come for 18 years.